I found out my wife has been drugging me for 2 years, and I don't know what to do. I thought I was losing my mind. Every morning, I'd wake up exhausted, like I'd been hit by a truck. My boss started commenting on my performance. Friends said I seemed off. I couldn't remember basic conversations from the day before. Jane suggested I see a doctor. She was so caring, making appointments, driving me there, even taking notes during the visits. The doctor ran every test. Nothing. Sleep study? Normal. Brain scan? Clear. Everyone chalked it up to stress from my recent promotion. But the strange thing was, I only felt like myself when Jane was out of town. Her sister lives in Phoenix, and Jane visits her every few months for long weekends. Those were the only times I felt sharp, energetic, actually able to think clearly. Last month, I started keeping a journal and hid it at work. The pattern became obvious once I wrote everything down. The good days always aligned with Jane being away. The bad ones? They were the days she made my coffee, cooked my dinner, or handed me my vitamins. 3 weeks ago, I installed a hidden camera in our kitchen. What I saw made my blood run cold. Jane, calmly crushing white pills and mixing them into my morning protein shake. She did it so casually, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. I confronted her yesterday. She didn't even deny it. Just stared at me with this cold expression I'd never seen before and said, "You weren't supposed to figure it out yet." Then she admitted it. She'd been drugging me with benzodiazepines. Strong ones. One she claimed to have gotten from her sick grandmother, who doesn't even exist. After confessing, Jane left the house without another word. She didn't answer my calls, didn't reply to my texts. The silence was deafening, filled only by the echo of her chilling admission. 2 days later, I got a message from her. It was a screenshot text I'd sent to my best friend Derek 2 years ago. They were raw, desperate. "I can't do this anymore, Derek. It should have been me. I just want it to end." I had no memory of writing them. According to the timestamp, I sent them a month after our son died in a car crash, with me behind the wheel. Moments later, a second message came. "I need to see you. Please. Just once." We met at a quiet cafe. The moment she saw me, Jane broke down. Tears streamed down her face. I did it for your good," she sobbed, barely able to speak. After the accident, you were destroying yourself. You blamed yourself for everything. You stopped eating, barely slept. You talked about ending it all." She pulled out her phone and showed me more old texts. My own words, frantic and hopeless. "I found them after you passed out one night. I was so scared," she whispered. "I thought I was losing you too." I seemed to believe her. We even started drifting back towards something that looked like normal, but something still felt off. I kept wondering, how did she have a screenshot of messages between me and Derek? I never sent her anything like that, and Derek swears he didn't either. 2 days later, I finally asked her, "Jane, I need to ask you something," I said over dinner. She was picking at her salad, hadn't touched much of it. "Those texts you showed me, the ones between me and Derek." She looked up, fork frozen halfway to her mouth. "What about them? How did you get screenshots of my private messages? I never sent those to you. And Derek says he never showed them to you either." The color drained from her face. She set down her fork with a shaky hand. I found them on your phone. My phone's been password protected for years. You don't know the code. You gave it me once, when you were really bad after the accident." "Jane," I leaned forward. "I'm going to ask you one more time. How did you get those screenshots?" She stood up abruptly, knocking over her water glass. The sound of it hitting the floor seemed to echo forever. "I don't have to explain myself to you. Not after what I've done for you. Not after everything I've sacrificed." She stormed out of the dining room. I heard her bedroom door slam. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something was eating at me, something beyond the obvious lies. I kept thinking about the accident, about those missing 5 days everyone said I spent in the hospital. Why couldn't I remember any of it? The next morning, Jane was gone. No note, no explanation. Just an empty house and more questions than answers. Digging deeper, I called in sick to work and drove to St. Mary's Hospital. The same hospital where they treated me after the crash. The same hospital where Jane had supposedly stayed by my side, caring for me while I recovered. The records department was a maze of bureaucracy, but I was determined. After 3 hours of paperwork and waiting, a tired-looking nurse finally pulled my file. "You were here for 5 days, she confirmed, reading from her screen. "Admitted on March 15th, discharged on March 20th. Was I conscious? Do you have any notes about my condition?" She scrolled through the digital records. "Actually, yes. You were in a medically induced coma for the first 3 days. Severe head trauma. You woke up on day 4, but you were heavily sedated for pain management. Says here you were quite agitated about the accident. Kept asking about your son. My hands are shaking. What about my wife? Any notes about her visiting? Let me check." More scrolling. Says here your wife visited every day after you're conscious. Very devoted. The nurses made notes about how caring she was. She paused. "Oh, that's interesting." Says here she was also a patient for the first 3 days. Treated in the ICU for injuries from the same accident. She was injured too? Yes, significant injuries. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, concussion. She was discharged the same day you woke up from your coma. I left the hospital with my head spinning. The pieces weren't fitting together. If Jane had been so caring, so devoted, why had she been drugging me? Why couldn't I remember giving Derek those suicidal text messages? That evening, I called Derek. We hadn't spoken much since the accident. He always seemed uncomfortable whenever I brought up that night. "Hey man," he answered, but his voice was tight. "How are you holding up?" "Derek, I need to ask you something important." "About the accident." Silence on the other end. "Derek, what about it?" "I've been having some memory problems. There's been some stuff happening. I need to understand what really happened that night." "Mike, you know what happened. You told me yourself. You crashed into a tree on Elm Street. You were upset about something, driving too fast. But I don't remember telling you that. I don't remember anything about crashing into a tree." Another long pause. "You were pretty messed up after the accident. Head trauma can do that to your memory." "Derek, I need to know the truth. Jane has been drugging me for 2 years. I'm starting to suspect a lot of things weren't what they seemed." "What do you mean, drugging you?" "Benzodiazepines. In my food, my drinks. Making me forget things, making me confused. I think she's been hiding something from me." Derek was quiet for a long moment. "Jesus, Mike, why would she do that?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." Price. The next morning, I called the police department and asked to speak to Officer Martinez, the cop who'd worked the accident scene. He was still active duty, working the day shift. "I remember that case," he said when I explained who I was. "Terrible thing. I'm sorry for your loss." "Officer Martinez, I need to ask you about the details of the accident. I've been having some memory issues, and some things aren't adding up." "That's understandable. Head trauma can do that." I heard papers shuffling. I kept copies of all my reports. "Let me pull the file. Can you tell me exactly what happened?" "According to the report, you were driving north on Elm Street with your son in the passenger seat. You hit a tree at high speed. The impact killed your son instantly. You were unconscious when we arrived. We had to extract you from the vehicle. Your injuries were consistent with being the driver." "A tree? I hit a tree." "That's right. You told us yourself when we interviewed you in the hospital. Said you were upset about something, lost control of the vehicle. Your blood alcohol came back clean, but you seemed disoriented from the head trauma." My head was spinning. "Officer Martinez, I don't remember telling you that. I don't remember hitting a tree. I'm starting to suspect a lot of things about that night." "What kind of things?" "My wife has been drugging me for 2 years. I think she's been hiding something from me about the accident." There was a long pause. "Mike, you said you crashed into a tree, and we closed the case considering your health issues. Are you telling me you think something else happened?" "I don't know what happened, but I know my wife has been lying to me about a lot of things. And if she was drugging me, could she have influenced what I told you at the hospital?" That's a serious accusation. Let me reopen this case. Can you come down to the station? I think we need to investigate this properly." I met Officer Martinez at the police station an hour later. He was a serious man with gray hair and the kind of weathered face that came from years of dealing with tragedy. "Mike, I'm gonna be straight with you. We closed your case because you gave us a clear statement about what happened, and your injuries were consistent with being the driver in a single vehicle accident. But if you're telling me your wife has been drugging you, that changes everything." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if she was drugging you, she could have influenced your statement. She could have made you believe something that didn't happen. And there's something else that's been bothering me about your case." "What?" Martinez pulled out a thick file. "Your wife was also injured in the accident. She was in the ICU for 3 days with broken ribs, internal bleeding, and a concussion. Now, at the time, we assumed she was injured as a passenger in your car. But looking back at the evidence," he spread several photos across his desk. "These are pictures of both vehicles after the accident. Your car hit a tree, but there's also damage consistent with a side impact collision. And your wife's injuries, they're not consistent with being a passenger in your car during a frontal collision." My head was spinning. "You're saying she wasn't in my car?" "I'm saying her injury patterns suggest she was in a different vehicle. A vehicle that hit yours." Martinez continued. "At the time, we were so focused on your statement about losing control that we didn't fully investigate the possibility of another vehicle. But now, Mike, I think your wife might have been in the car that killed your son." Martinez spread the accident report across his desk. "The thing is, there was one witness to the accident. Well, sort of. There's a shop owner on Elm Street who might have seen something." "What kind of shop?" "Angelo's Vintage Clothing. It's right near where the accident happened. When we investigated, the owner said his security camera wasn't working. But if your wife has been lying about other things, you think he might have been lying too? I think it's worth checking out. Want to take a ride with me?" Angelo's Vintage Clothing was in the kind of neighborhood where you didn't walk alone at night. The kind of place where accidents happened and nobody saw anything. The shop itself was squeezed between a vacant lot and a check-cashing place, its windows covered with faded posters and iron bars. Officer Martinez knocked on the door. The man who answered was somewhere in his 70s, with thick glasses and suspenders. But his eyes were sharp, alert. "We're closed," he said with a slight accent. "Mr. Angelo? I'm Officer Martinez. We spoke 2 years ago about the car accident outside your shop." The old man's face changed immediately. The wariness was replaced by something else. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "I told you before, camera was broken. I don't know nothing about no accident." "Sir, we're reopening the case. This is Michael Morrison. He was one of the victims. We have reason to believe there might be more to the story." Angelo glanced nervously up and down the street, then stepped aside to let us in. The shop was cluttered with old clothes and the smell of mothballs. He led us to a back room that served as both office and storage. "Why are you asking about this now?" he said, settling into a chair behind an old desk. "Because I think someone lied to me," I said. "Someone who should have told me the truth." Martinez leaned forward. "Mr. Angelo, I need to ask you directly. Was your security camera really broken the night of the accident?" Angelo was quiet for a long moment, studying both of our faces. "You look different than before," he said to me. "Before? Was I here before?" "You never been here." "But she has. Your wife. She came here maybe a week after the accident." Martinez and I exchanged glances. "What did she want?" Martinez asked. "She wanted to know about the camera. Same as you. Wanted to know if it was working, if it recorded the accident." "And what did you tell her?" Angelo's hands were shaking slightly. "I told her same thing I told police. Camera broken. But it wasn't broken, was it?" Martinez pressed. Angelo shook his head slowly. "Camera worked fine. Always worked fine. But she gave me money. A lot of money. So it would be better if the camera stayed broken." "How much money?" I asked. $50,000. Cash. More money than I ever seen in my life. Martinez whistled low. "That's a serious bribe, Mr. Angelo." I know it was wrong, but I needed the money. My wife, she was sick. Cancer. We had no insurance." "Mr. Angelo," Martinez said gently, "I need to see that footage." Angelo looked at both of us for a long time. "You really don't remember nothing about the accident?" he asked me. "I remember driving. I remember the impact. I remember waking up in the hospital. Everything else is blank." Angelo stood up and walked to an old filing cabinet. He pulled out a key and unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside was a small external hard drive. "I never destroyed it," he said quietly. "I thought someday, maybe someone would need to know the truth. I thought maybe God wouldn't forgive me if I destroyed it." He connected the drive to an old computer and opened a video file. The timestamp showed March 15th, 11:25 p.m. "You sure you both want to see this?" Angelo asked, looking at Martinez. "We have to," Martinez said. The video was grainy, black and white, but clear enough to make out the details. The camera was positioned to show the intersection from above, like a bird's eye view. At 11:28 p.m., my car appeared from the bottom of the screen, heading north on Elm Street. I could see two figures in the car, me driving, and a smaller figure in the passenger seat. Liam. I was driving slowly, carefully. My turn signal was on as I approached the intersection. The light was green. At 11:30 p.m., a red Honda Civic came from the left side of the screen, heading east on Oak Street. It was moving fast, too fast, way too fast. The light was red. Had been red for at least 10 seconds. The Honda didn't slow down, didn't even try to stop. The impact was brutal. The Civic slammed into the passenger side of my car, right where my son was sitting. Both cars spun wildly before coming to rest. "Jesus Christ," Martinez whispered. "You didn't hit a tree. Someone hit you." But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what happened next. The driver's door of the Honda opened, and a man stumbled out. He was clearly drunk, swaying on his feet. But he wasn't alone. The passenger door opened, and another figure emerged. This one was smaller, moving more carefully. The figure had long hair and was wearing a dress. It was Jane, but as she stepped into the light from the street lamp, I saw something that made my blood freeze. The drunk driver turned toward her, and for the first time, I could see his face clearly. It was Derek. Derek, my best friend. The man who'd been uncomfortable talking about the accident. Martinez was staring at the screen in shock. "That's not possible. Your wife and your friend." I watched in horror as Jane and Derek looked around frantically, then both ran toward my car. They could see Liam in the passenger seat, could see me unconscious behind the wheel. For a moment, I thought they were going to help. But then Derek grabbed Jane's arm and pulled her back. They seemed to be arguing about something. Jane kept pointing toward my car, toward her dying son. Derek was shaking his head, pulling her away. Then Derek looked directly at the camera. He said something to Jane and pointed. She looked up at Angelo's shop, at the camera that was supposed to be broken. For 5 minutes, they stood there debating. Jane would take a step toward my car, and Derek would pull her back. She was crying, clearly desperate to help her son. But Derek kept talking to her, kept shaking his head. Finally, Derek made the decision for both of them. He grabbed Jane and dragged her back to the Honda. She fought him at first, but he was stronger. He shoved her into the passenger seat and got back behind the wheel. They sat in that car for another 3 minutes while my son died 20 feet away. They sat there while I lay unconscious, bleeding. They sat there until the sirens got close enough to hear. Only then did Derek get out and collapse on the ground, pretending to be more injured than he was. Jane got out and did the same, positioning herself away from the driver's side so it wouldn't be immediately obvious who had been driving. The video ended. Martinez and I sat in Angelo's back room, staring at the blank screen. My entire world had just collapsed. "Mike," Martinez said quietly, "your wife and your best friend killed your son, and they've been covering it up for 2 years. She's been drugging me," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "making me forget, making me believe I was the one who killed him." Martinez turned to Angelo. "Sir, I need you to come with us to the station. You're going to need to give a full statement." Angelo nodded sadly. "I should have told the truth from the beginning. I should never have taken that money." "You're telling the truth now," Martinez said. "That's what matters." The police moved fast once they had the video evidence. Jane was arrested at her sister's house in Phoenix, where she'd been hiding since she left me. Derek was picked up at his apartment before he even knew the case had been reopened. Both of them confessed once they realized the video existed. There was no point in denying it. Derek admitted to driving drunk that night. He'd been drinking heavily after our friendship had become strained. Apparently, I'd been suspicious of his relationship with Jane for months. The night of the accident, he and Jane had been together at a hotel. They were driving back to her house when Derek ran the red light. Jane's confession was even more damning. She admitted that after the accident, she'd been terrified of going to prison. But she'd also been terrified of losing me. So she'd come up with a plan to make me believe I was responsible for the accident. While I was unconscious in the hospital, she'd worked with Derek to create a false story. They'd bribed Angelo to hide the video evidence. When I woke up, still heavily sedated and confused from my head injury, Jane convinced me that I had been driving alone with Liam and had crashed into a tree. In my drugged, traumatized state, I believed her version of events and repeated it to the police. The benzodiazepines came later, after I was discharged from the hospital. Jane had stolen them from a medical supply room where she worked part-time as a cleaner, something I'd forgotten about until the investigation revealed it. She'd been mixing them into my food and drinks to keep me docile and prevent me from questioning the inconsistencies in my memories. For 2 years, Jane had been manipulating my perception of reality. She made me believe I was having memory problems due to the trauma. She made me believe I was the one who'd killed our son. The trial was a media circus. Mother drugs husband to hide role in child's death was the headline that followed me everywhere. The story had everything: betrayal, murder, conspiracy, a 2-year cover-up. Derek got 30 years for vehicular manslaughter, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. Jane got 25 years for conspiracy, accessory to murder, and aggravated assault for the drugging. Officer Martinez testified about the investigation, about how Jane had manipulated the original case. Angelo testified about the bribe, about the video evidence. I testified about the 2 years of lost time, about the guilt I'd carried for something I didn't do. Jane's last words to me were, "I'm sorry it had to end this way." Derek didn't say anything, just stare at the floor while they read his sentence. Now I'm sitting in our house, my house, 6 months after the trials ended. The divorce was finalized while Jane was in prison. She signed over everything without a fight. I think she knew she owed me that much. The house is too quiet. I've been thinking about selling it, but I can't bring myself to do it yet. This is where Liam took his first steps, where he learned to ride a bike in the backyard, where he used to sneak downstairs on Christmas morning to peek at presents. The drugs are completely out of my system now. My mind is clear for the first time in 2 years. I can think, I can remember, I can function like a normal human being, but I'm alone. I've started going to therapy. Dr. Williams is helping me work through everything: the grief, the betrayal, the 2 years of lost time. She says I'm making progress, but some days I'm not sure what progress even means. The hardest part is the quiet. For 2 years, even though I was drugged and confused, I wasn't alone. Jane was there. She was taking care of me, even if her motives were selfish. She was the only other person who remembered Liam's laugh, who could talk about his favorite foods or the way he used to sing made-up songs in the bathtub. Now I'm the only one left who remembers those things. I've started writing them down, all the memories of Liam that I can recall. His first word, dada. His favorite book, Green Eggs and Ham. The way he used to fall asleep with his thumb in his mouth and his other hand twirled in my hair. I'm afraid that if I don't write them down, they'll fade away like everything else. The justice system worked. Jane and Derek got the punishment they deserved. The truth finally came out. Officer Martinez reopened the case when I told him about the drugging. Angelo came forward with the video evidence. The books were balanced. But justice doesn't bring back the dead. It doesn't fill the silence in a house where a child used to live. It doesn't replace the people who shared your memories, even if they were the ones who created the tragedy in the first place. I have my clarity now. I have my truth. I have my justice. But I also have my loneliness. Every night, I sit in Liam's room and remember. I remember the real version of that night. Not the drug-confused version Jane and Derek had fed me, but the truth. I remember driving carefully, following the law, doing everything right. I remember the impact, the sound of breaking glass, the silence that followed. And I remember that my son died because the 2 people closest to me made selfish choices. Because my wife valued her freedom more than her child's life. Because my best friend was too cowardly to face the consequences of his actions. The truth set me free. But freedom has a price. I'm the only one left who remembers that Liam used to laugh in his sleep.